Good morning. I'm Darrell West, Vice President of Governance Studies and Director of the Center for Technology Innovation at the Brookings Institution, and I'd like to welcome you to today's forum on mobile technology. Today, we are very pleased to welcome Michael Saylor. He is the Chairman and CEO of MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy is a software company that Michael founded in 1989. It specializes in business intelligence, enterprise reporting, dashboard, and online analytical processing software. He is the author of a new book, The Mobile Wave: How Mobile Intelligence Will Change Everything. The book shows the transformative possibilities of mobile computing and how it affects fields from education and healthcare to commerce. Please join me in welcoming Michael to Brookings. Michael.
The book is about software and its impact on the economy, but I thought I'd make a few geopolitical comments. From the point of view of a technologist, around 1980, there was a crisis of confidence in America, and it was probably punctuated by the Iran embassy debacle. Reagan came to power, and around 80, there was a belief in the country, I think, that we were struggling to compete in the world economy. We thought the Japanese were going to take over many of our facilities. We had movies like Gung Ho. They bought the Rockefeller Center. We were concerned that America had lost its economic competitiveness. Then I think there was an inflection point, and it was driven a lot by the PC revolution and by software. Microsoft was founded in '76, Oracle was founded in '76, Apple Computer was founded in '76, three great companies in our time. In 1980, they were just embryonic. They all came public in the later '80s. And something unintended happened. It was the Western world began to prevail over the rest of the world because of software. And the software advantage was in large part due to the branching of the English, of the language, the Latin Roman alphabet versus the pictographic alphabet and kanji and simplified Chinese. And so if you think about the early computers, 8-bit computers and 16-bit computers couldn't process 25,000 character pictograph language. So you needed a 26-character language. And if you ever type on a keyboard, even today, right, we've gone from 8-bit computers to 16-bit computers to 32-bit computers to 64-bit computers. We still don't have any good way to input characters in Japanese or Chinese. Hence, if you want to write software, all the early languages, BASIC, DOS, etc., they're all in English. It was English language companies that were preeminent there. Imagine what would happen if you were 18 years old and you asked your parents, what do I need to do to make money in the society? And they said, well, you need to be a computer programmer. And you said, okay, I think I'll learn to program computers. And you showed up at college and they said, well, before you can learn to program computers, you must first master Japanese. It's a big difficulty. And that's, in fact, the problem, the challenge that you face if you live in China or in Japan. At age 18, you must first master English. Okay, and in fact, the great majority of Japanese companies, in fact, from what I heard anecdotally, one Japanese company programs its own website. The rest actually rely on foreigners to program their websites. And so starting in the 80s, we started to see things change. Intel was about to go bankrupt. They didn't. They were saved by the microprocessor. And we know the story of Intel. We know the story of Microsoft. With the preeminence of the PC, which lifted Microsoft and Intel and Dell Computer and HP and IBM to prominence, next we saw the internet wave of the 90s, and that brought to prominence eBay and Amazon and Netscape and TCP/IP and the internet, and then Wikipedia and Google and Yahoo. Again, no real foreign companies. In fact, as soon as something becomes software, the variable cost of distributing it goes to zero. So it's expensive to write the first copy. The next copy is a penny, which means that if I win the major market for software, then I win every other market. And what we've seen in the software industry is there's substantially no successful companies that aren't American. The only successful company of record in the software industry is SAP, and SAP is run by Americans and uses English as its primary language, and for all practical purposes is an American company. Every other company is an American company that's successful. This wasn't the case before, but in the year 2000, the most successful European company was Nokia, a telephone company and a mobile handset company. Software wasn't a serious component of telephones in the year 2000. Today, Nokia is all but destroyed, unwound for all practical purposes, and it's vanquished by Apple computer using software. As software infected the phone, control of the industry shifted from Europe back to the US. As software infects the tablet computer, or infects the tablet, control of the industry shifts back to the US. And in this case to Apple computer and potentially to Google. Software is in essence infecting every industry. The mobile wave is about the impact of that software. About half of the economy is now going to dematerialize into software. Software running on a handset, this form factor. Within 5 years, there'll be 5 billion smartphones on the planet. And that means anything that can dematerialize to this will. And what does that mean? You start your car with this, you open your house with this, your passport, your driver's license, your credit card, your loyalty card, cash, just about it used to be, for example, a camera was a product. Now it's an icon on the screen. Used to be a video was a product. Now it's an icon on the screen. A video camera used to be a product. Now it's an icon on a screen. A tape recorder used to be a product. Now it's an icon on the screen. Well, by the way, it turns out that tape recorders, cameras, used to be made by the Japanese and the Koreans and the Chinese. Now they're icons on the screen. They're manufactured by someone that actually speaks English that programs. And so, with the unwinding of the hardware industry and the dematerialization of things we hold in our hand, we actually see the destruction of traditional manufacturing industries. And to a great degree, there's three things that take place when something dematerializes. There's the first order effect, the second order effect, the third order effect. The first order effect is I take my keys from my car or my house key or my driver's license and it becomes a piece of software on a screen. What's obvious? Well, I can't lose it anymore. Right? I've got 100 credit cards, I've got 100 loyalty cards, I've got 10 keys, and I've got all my cash on the computer. I can't lose it. I don't have to know where it is. And it's got no weight, no mass. Okay, so that's interesting. By the way, it's hard to steal at that point, right? You steal this, the police can track you within 10 meters. So as soon as something becomes software, you can't steal it, and you can't lose it. The second order effect is, now it's software. It's not subject to the laws of Newtonian physics. I have a set of car keys in my pocket. I've got one set. There's conservation of mass. I give it to you. I don't have it anymore. As soon as it's software, I can do this. And I can flick the key to everybody in the room. Now there's 100 keys. I can flick the key from China to the United States. Not only can I do that, software is subject to the laws of cyberspace, and therefore the appropriate metaphor is not Newtonian physics or science fiction. The appropriate metaphor is fantasy. I can cast a spell on the key. I can give you a piece of software that opens that actually starts your car, but not if you're drunk. Start your car, but only during the day. I can give you a learner's key. It starts the car, but only if your parents in the car. I can have a companion key. It starts the car, but only if you're with one other driver. I can give you a key that lets you drive around New York. You just can't drive to California. So this is something you can't do with physical key. You can do it with a software key because you can cast a spell on a software key. People that think in a very fanciful fashion, this is a benefit of the American culture, I think. They have a benefit in the software business because they're not constrained by rails. Right? In the software world, just about anything is possible. This is why the creators at Apple, it's no surprise, right? Steve Jobs sponsored Pixar, and they made movies. And all of a sudden, the guy that makes movies becomes the most successful company in the history of the world, creating software that runs on phones. There's a third order effect. And this is one that's not always understood. I'm standing on a beach this summer in the Mediterranean, and a guy walks up to me and he goes, I read about your writings, and I agree with what you're saying, and I am the largest manufacturer of textbooks in my country. I won't tell you the country because I don't want to embarrass the guy. But it's not America. He says, I'm the largest manufacturer of textbooks, and the government just put out a tender offer for tablet computers for every student in the school system. What should I do? Okay, well, for 2,000 years, people read books on parchment and paper, and the only meaningful change in reading technology came 2 years ago with the iPad, arguably the Kindle, right? But in the last 2 years, we finally got something that competes favorably with paper. You don't need to read on a piece of paper anymore. So I looked at the guy and said, you know, the first order impulse would be to chase this technology wave, which is go ahead and code all your textbooks into software so they run on those tablet computers so you keep that industry or keep that market share. But that's only the first order, a knee-jerk response, and you'll fail. You have no chance. And the reason you'll fail is because chemistry and calculus and physics work the same in your country as they work in every other country. Right? In Peru and Turkey and Romania, chemistry works the same way. And so there's no marketplace for 200 different local language textbooks to teach chemistry. The future of learning thermodynamics is I give you the book, but the book's got a simulation in it, and you turn a dial and you boil the water, and then you replace the water with mercury, and then you replace the mercury with ice, and then you replace the ice with coal, and then you replace the coal with something else, and you do it in 1 split second. And that's a pretty interesting thermodynamics textbook. That's going to obliterate, right, whatever you could do. And the bottom line is the entire local market, every local textbook manufacturer is going to get obliterated, right? The local benefits, the fact that you lived in the country, the fact that you had a local manufacturing plant, the fact that the local union liked you, the fact that you paid off the local police force, the fact that the local politicians supported you, and the fact that the local school board mandated your textbook, all that's obliterated, right? And so the third impact of software is the formation of global software networks. Because if you can actually create a, fill in the blank, a chemistry textbook that will educate everybody in America, that means you'll educate everybody in Europe, right? Because there's one other geopolitical trend I didn't touch on, but it's a very important one. It's the formation of the EU. I'm sitting in Europe this summer, and I was just chatting with someone, and I said, just as an aside, which European country do you think benefited most from the EU? And then I caught myself in about 100 milliseconds. I said, wait a minute, I'm going to answer that question. The greatest beneficiary of the EU was America. Because what happened with the formation of the EU was the breakdown of the local customs, the local language, the local sovereignty, the local economy, and the local currency of 30 different countries. And the French will fight to the death to defend the French language and the franc, but they're not going to fight to the death to defend the language of the EU, which is English, and the currency of the EU, which is the euro. And the same is true with the Hungarians, the Romanians, the Germans. Anywhere you go in the EU now, there's a local language menu, and then there's English. As soon as the Europeans decided to trade with each other, they gave up all their local trade constraints. Then they gave up their local language, they gave up the local currency, they gave up the local customs. They adopted first the euro, and as soon as you adopt the euro, people said, as long as I'm in somebody else's currency I don't control, why not just flip to the dollar? And so the dollar became the major protocol for the transmission of wealth in the society, and I think it's like 70% of all liquid currency. With the dollar rose to preeminence American law, American custom, American values, American providers. And so what you've got now is you've got this billion-person system. There are about 1 billion people speaking English, spending dollars, buying technology. If you write a piece of software to open a door, to provide health care, to identify yourself, to move payments around, to educate someone in chemistry, as soon as you write that piece of software, you're going to sell that into a marketplace of 1 billion people. The winner of that marketplace will almost certainly be an American company with native English speakers that understands the American market. Because if you think about it, I mean, what countries actually speak American? Speak English, right? You got us versus the Canadians, the Australians, and the Brits. And in that particular case, we're 10x bigger than any of those 3 countries. And so therefore, it's always the American provider that wins that ecosystem. And after you win that ecosystem, you win all of the EU, because every single multinational in the EU trades in English. And after you win the EU, that means you win the Japanese and the Chinese, because what are they going to do? I mean, at this point in time, you've got a very interesting mobile wave. The mobile wave, geopolitically speaking, is a wave of software networks running on smartphones, running on tablet computers, dematerializing everything you read, dematerializing magazines, books, newspapers, the education system, services, point-of-sale checkout, underwriting of loans, information provision, entertainment, healthcare, all of these things dematerializing to software networks. And the most powerful idea in the year 2012 is the global software network. Yesterday, there was a big announcement. How many of you followed it? Maybe you care, maybe you don't care. The announcement was Facebook crossed 1 billion people. Okay, by the way, they had 950 million people like 12 weeks ago. Okay, so take your 90-day calendar, take 45 million, they're clocking 500,000 people a day adding to the network. So they crossed 1 billion people. Google crossed 1 billion people. Okay, what is the chances that any country, any local social network or any local search engine has any chance of competing with the economy of scale of a billion-person software network? Right? The Chinese aren't afraid, they aren't afraid of any American company, other than the weapons companies, which they're kind of afraid of. But, yeah. But they're not afraid of any software company until Google and Facebook. And it's not a random occurrence that both Google and Facebook are persona non grata in China. They are afraid of them because those networks are capable of toppling a government. Right? And we just saw it with the Autumn Rage. We saw it with the Arab Spring. A network like YouTube, Google Maps, Google Search, Gmail, Facebook. These things are much more powerful than any software trick or technology trick we came up with, short of course, nuclear weapons and aircraft carriers. But that's old news, right? And this is the new news. Now, what are we looking forward to? I think what we're going to see is the rise of a new set of global software networks. Networks that will give you health care, networks that will navigate your car, networks that will open your door. One day, every door in Europe will get opened by a phone. When that happens, there will be a technology company behind it. It'll be an American technology company. And one of two things will happen. Either the network that actually opens the door will be sitting in America, or it'll be sitting in a data center in the EU controlled by the American company, or it'll be an American company that sold the software that got configured in some local country. But at the end of the day, it's clear that the American economy has an incredible economic edge and technical edge, and American technical protocols, American services, American markets, American languages are preeminent. If you're a 6-year-old child in Pakistan with a $300 tablet computer, within a few years you'll be able to learn any of 100 languages for free without the permission of your parents, or the local politician, or the local religious leader. And when you have that choice, what language are you going to learn? Right? If you learn English, everything you sell in English sells at a higher price to a larger market. Everything you buy in English comes at a lower cost with more liquidity. Every question you ask in English, you get the answer back quicker, more accurately, for less. Right? There's a cost to disconnect yourself from the mobile ecosystem, right? In North Korea, you disconnect yourself, you don't have Google Maps, you don't have Google Street View, you don't have Wikipedia. Run any query on Google on a proper noun, you get a Wikipedia response. In essence, it's getting more and more expensive to not be plugged into that network. And the price is only going to go up because right now, you've got a billion-person network that lets you share photos or lets you answer questions, and these are actually, in the greater scheme of things, fairly trivial software functions. What happens when you have a billion people in a healthcare network and it keeps you alive? What happens when you have a billion people in a security network and allows you to fight crime or keeps a criminal from taking advantage of you? Or a billion people on a notary network or some kind of payment securities network? At that point, you can't be cut off from the network. You might as well lobotomize yourself or put blinders on. And so we're going to see countries, including China, dragged kicking and screaming into this particular ecosystem because you can't stop it. And I'll stop with one last point, which is Facebook went from 5 million or 6 million users to 65 million users in China over the last 3 years while it was illegal. Now, how powerful is that for a business model when you gain 60 million customers in an illegal setting? And that just shows the power of the mobile wave.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your history of technology because I have lived through this revolution. I remember many years ago when I was writing my dissertation, I did so on a typewriter. And then I have gone through mainframes, personal computers, laptops, tablets, and now smartphones. So I certainly, just based on my own experience, appreciate the technology revolution through which we have gone. The book I thought was fascinating and kind of getting into the impact of mobile technology in a lot of different areas. I want to ask you about the subtitle of your book, though, because you talk about how mobile intelligence will change everything. Explain this concept of mobile intelligence and what you mean by it.
Well, really, I'm using intelligence as synonymous with software, but active software. Software running on the PC is like solid state. You had to go to it, and it's not mobile. It's fixed. You have to go to a cubicle. You have to go to an office. And the fourth wave of computing was the internet wave. The third wave was the PC wave. But in the fourth wave, you had about 350 million people that were working on software about 3 hours a week in their cubicle. They're white-collar workers between the ages of 20 and 45 in the Western world. And you probably needed $25,000 worth of infrastructure to use that. So it's software that's it's not that good, and it's working 15 hours a week on a set of people. The fifth wave of computing is the mobile wave, and mobile software running on a phone or a tablet computer is going to 5 billion people 150 hours a week. And you don't need $25,000 worth of infrastructure. You need maybe $200 or $300 worth of infrastructure. So we see software going from solid state to vapor state, right? And in vapor, it becomes, it just dissipates, and it's all around us. It's in our clothing. It's in our lives. Software can wake you up in the middle of the night. People sleep next to their phones, and the phone is running software. And when the phone starts to beep and vibrate and make noise, then that's truly mobile intelligence, right? Because now the software makes us intelligent. Right? The software makes us intelligent, but if it's not on us, right? If it's not hooked to us all the time, if it's not mobile, then it's not permeating our lives. And so mobile intelligence is really just a discussion of what happens when software changes the behavior of 5 billion people. And I guess a good example would be, you use software to navigate, right? Who gets lost anymore if you've got a phone, you're running Google Maps on it? That's truly mobile intelligence. 10 years ago, we carry around physical maps. People get lost all the time. Now if you have a smartphone, it's kind of hard to figure out how to get lost. In fact, I've got a program, What's Up? I can sit here right now, I can go and I can type to someone, come see me, I can punch a button, it'll GPS locate me, put me on a map, and zap the map to them. And you gotta be an idiot to not be able to find me, right? So if that isn't the intelligence to be able to, how many people could 10 years ago recite in 100 milliseconds their GPS coordinates? Right? I mean, you could say, what are you, stupid? Right? 10 years ago, you can't recite your latitude and longitude to minutes and seconds. Today, everybody can. Well, at least everybody that's got an iPhone or an Android phone can, just with the right software. So I just see we have become so much more intelligent in being able to fetch that. I can fetch that coordinate, and I can project that to as many people as I want instantly. And so, in a way, the software makes us superhuman in our intelligence. There's an author, Arthur C. Clarke, right? And he's very famous for a quote. I put it on the back cover of my prospectus when the company came public in 1998. And the quote, which I think is wonderful, is, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so if you don't understand it, it's magic. 10 years ago, if you looked at me and if you were a mile away and you said, so where are you? And if I rattled off my latitude and longitude perfectly and then I telegraphed it, or if I telepathed it, right, through the space to you, you would say that's a magical person. And today, you would say that's just a person with an iPhone. Right? That's why you need to get the iPhone. And that's what I mean when I say mobile intelligence changing everything.
Okay, in your book you also write, mobile computing is different, not just smaller. And I think that's an important insight that a lot of people miss, because they look at a smartphone and they think it's just a smaller version of everything that we had previously. You obviously, I think that's not the case. So what do you mean by that?
It goes back to my point of my first order effect and my second order effect. You know, the first order effect is I put the software on the smartphone instead of on the PC in the office, and even then, you know, I just convert to software. You know, a brilliant physicist would say you can throw a baseball 30 feet through water, you can throw a baseball 300 feet through air, you can throw a baseball 300 million miles through space. And if they're really smart, they calculate the ballistic trajectory and take into account all the foreign gravitational objects on the trajectory of the baseball. But that's all Newtonian physics, and that's very linear thinking. And on the other hand, software running on a smartphone is subject to laws of cyberspace. So a software person would say, I throw a baseball in cyberspace and it becomes a beach ball, and then it becomes 10 chocolate balls, and then it becomes a birthday cake, and then it morphs into a wedding cake, and then a beautiful woman jumps out of the wedding cake and I marry her. That's how a software person thinks, right? They're not constrained by anything looks like Newtonian physics. And as soon as you and this is why the traditionalists will fail in the software business. The traditional banker, the traditional healthcare provider, they will fail. And this is why the Googles and the Apples succeed, because as soon as I conceptualize a credit card as a piece of software, all of a sudden I figure I got a credit card, now I can give 5 software credit cards to my 5 children. Now I can give a software credit card to my son, but his doesn't buy alcohol. And now I can give a software credit card to my daughter, it only works on campus, because I don't want her taking a road trip with her boyfriend off to Vegas. And, you know, plastic cards don't have those constraints. Software credit cards do. Now I can go to the mall with 20 kids in the Girl Scout troop and I can flick 20 credit cards to them good for lunch, up to $15 each. They can go to any of the restaurants in the food court, spend the money, and whatever they don't spend comes back to me 2 hours from now. Right? That's how a software person thinks about a credit card. Right? If the conventional thinker puts the American Express card on the phone and all it does is what the plastic card did, they will surely fail.
So you mentioned Facebook and it crossing 1 billion users. A lot of businesses, including Facebook, have had difficulty navigating this transition to the mobile world. Why do you think this migration is challenging for so many businesses, and why are so many businesses having difficulty with this?
Well, generally any successful business is an organizational structure built in a certain legal environment, in a certain physical environment, in a certain competitive environment, in a certain customary market environment. And it's the genetic winner, it's the genetic winner of competition throughout time in that particular ecosystem. And so probably represents the best thinking of some hard-working, focused person. Hence, like, say, the New York Times rises to preeminence. It's the best example of a newspaper in the largest media market for English language newspapers in America. We remember it. There were lots of other newspapers in New York. They failed. There were lots of newspapers in the rest of the country. They didn't rise to the same promise in the New York Times. But as of the year 2010, everybody wanted to read a newspaper in print ink. To ship 2 million copies of the New York Times cost $230 million. It's a variable cost. Once you know there's a variable cost of $100 a year per subscriber, then it dictates you must behave in a certain way. The New York Times has a printing press, has a lot of capital, has a union to deal with, or many unions to deal with. It has New York City, it has trucks, it has a distribution network of magazine stands, it has a way of selling advertising. That was all finely tuned over the course of 100 years in a certain way. Now that's all obliterated, right? The impact of the union, the printing plant, the capital, the paper. The New York Times owns a newsprint or a newspaper, a paper company, right? They were backward integrated into their own supply because that made sense. None of those things matter anymore, right? And in truth, the mayor of New York doesn't matter anymore to the New York Times. We're moving toward a world of 5 billion people that read on a tablet computer. Within 10 years, I believe there'll be 10 billion tablet computers. There's 5 billion, 6 billion people that will be reading, but tablet computers will be in your hotel room, the point of sale, in your office place. They'll be in buses, trains, boats, planes. They're vocational instruments. So within 10 years, you've got everybody on the planet reading on a tablet computer. Now the variable cost of reading a newspaper went to 0. Now if you're an English language newspaper publishing national news, your natural audience is at least 1 billion people. If you believe what I just said, we're going toward 5 billion people. I think everybody who is a knowledge worker is going to be sucked into the English language. It will become the Latin of the mobile era. In that case, you can't afford to have a natural circulation of 2 million. And so you've got to basically lose all of your foolish consistencies, or in this case, every brilliant insight that was developed by the person you respect in the previous generation now has to be questioned, because if the guy that won the marketplace battle 100 years ago was alive today, he or she wouldn't do it the same way, right? And this is the problem with traditionalists. They adhere to tradition, and what they forget is that the guy or the person they respect was probably breaking every tradition in their time frame in order to win the marketplace. And if they were alive today, they would be breaking those norms again. And so there is no good business strategy for growth other than technology. And Nokia was a company that operated lumber mills in the middle 1800s. And for 150 years, the people that ran it thought they were going to invent a new technology and go into new markets. And then sometime 10 years ago, the people running the company forgot that was the secret of the company's success. And rather than moving forward and embracing software and becoming the best provider of software for a phone in the world, they actually moved the opposite direction. They undercommitted to Symbian, and then when Stephen Elop took over the company, he abandoned Symbian, basically abandoned software, and at that point put a stake in the heart of his own company, which was on a downhill slide from that point. So I think hopefully that answers your question.
Yep. Let me ask you about identity theft, because you're mentioning that mobile devices are going to have your credit card capability or its mobile payment equivalent, passport, house keys, car keys, and so on. There was a Time Magazine wireless survey, or survey of wireless users that just came out about a month ago, and it found only 29% of smartphone users actually have passwords. So the question is, if we add all these new applications onto mobile devices, and many people keep their front door unlocked, isn't this a recipe for grand larceny?
Yeah, I think that would be an opinion of someone that doesn't understand technology and/or is afraid of technology, or just afraid of the future. I think, and as is typical, it's exactly the opposite that's true. As soon as these things dematerialize the software, then it becomes 100 times harder to steal anything. There's $220 billion of credit card fraud in the world today, $220 billion a year. So let's think about that, for example. I have a credit card. If you see my number, you could pick up the phone and dial in and try to order something using a credit card number, right? There's a special upcharge called card not present. If you're doing a credit card transaction but the card is not present at the time, normally a credit card company charges you like an extra % or 2% because the fraud rate's so high. If I got your credit card number, I could just blast it out to a bunch of hackers and they could run up 100,000 charges simultaneously with card not present. This is a danger. Credit cards try to defeat that by putting a security number on the card. So you actually have the card, you flip it over and you read the security code, which is a 3-digit code on a Visa, it's a 4-digit code on an Amex. It's static. It's static for the life of the card. Good idea, except for the fact that walk into any bar at 2 a.m. in the morning, you'll see there's a stack of credit cards about that high. People left their credit card. People leave millions of credit cards a week in bars and restaurants. Millions a week. Okay? How hard is it to come up with a stolen credit card? Not at all. So I can call in and give you a security code. We still don't have any kind of security there, hence massive credit card fraud. Now, what happens if I put the credit card on a phone? Well, here's an example of mobile identity. This is a product we have. It's called Usher. And I put my employee ID or an employee ID on the phone, call it a credit card, right? And when I do that, I could actually have, I don't know if you can see it, but I can have a barcode here. And you can go and you could scan and validate the credit card barcode with any other phone, and you can check with the server to see whether or not the card is valid or stolen, and of course you could revoke it. Now, this is not revolutionary. What's interesting, what is revolutionary is that I can flip this thing and I can generate a 4-digit security code. We call it an Usher code. This one is 1815. That code is good for 1 minute 51 seconds. You can't see there's a clock here. But I take that 1815. I can take any phone on the planet, and I could type in 1815, and that will actually fetch my credential off of a network or an encrypted network over a phone line. What does that mean? It means I could call from Singapore to a banker in New York City, and I could say, move $1 million on my authorization. He could say, who are you? I'd say, I'm Michael Saylor. He'd say, what's your authorization? I'd say, 1815. He types in 1815, and we've got a perfect mobile signature where I, in essence, sent my passport through the phone line. It says, Michael Saylor at this latitude and longitude, at this Greenwich Mean Time, fetched a digital signature, a permission, because he's authorized to do it. And this banker on the other end received the digital signature. And so we've got the party, the counterparty, and it's almost impossible to fraud. You steal this phone, right? It's impossible to steal a mobile phone without the complicity of the government and the phone company, right? If you ever use the feature Find My iPhone, right? You can find your iPhone to within 10 meters anytime you want. It's flabbergasting to me that anybody steals any phone. There's a unique device identifier inside this phone. If Verizon or AT&T wanted to lock that down completely, then anybody that steals a phone would basically be stealing a homing beacon to bring the police to them as soon as they turn on the phone. They just show up at the door. It's impossible to steal anything that's actually sitting on a network device. So at this point, people may not lock their phone, but it's simple. You put a 4-digit PIN on the phone, and then the phone is as secure as your cash card, right? And people use cash cards. If you actually put an infrared filter on top of this camera, which is about to happen in the next generation of phones, you just hold it like that, it'll do a retina scan. It becomes utterly impossible to steal a phone. But even right now, you can use voice authentication and a single PIN to make it impossible to open or crack the device. Should you steal it, you can only hold it until the police show up to your house to pick it up, right? And that being the case, the phone itself is secure. When the credit card goes on the phone, you would obliterate $200 billion worth of credit card theft per year, okay? That's one issue. You know, I talk to people all the time. A girl comes to New York City, she's a student, and she's working in a restaurant. I say, well, how are you doing that? You're on a student visa, right? She goes, yeah. I said, so, well, don't they ask for your social security number? She said, yeah, I just give them my roommates. You know, there are 20 million organizations with obsolete, ineffective identification systems in the world. The most ineffective, right, is the American Social Security card, which is a name and a number, right? Followed closely by a UCLA student ID, which is a picture and a name on a laminated piece of paper. I can take Photoshop, snapshot those things, and pound out 100 counterfeit of those things and use them forever. The other extreme is the United Arab Emirates National Citizen Card, which is a plastic chip card keyed to your DNA, retina scan, blood test, etc. on a computer system. But you know, the best in the world, which is similar, by the way, to the Saudi National ID card, on the back of it, it says, it is illegal to take this out of the country. Okay, think about that. If you take it out of the country and you lose it within 2 weeks, you must report it to the government. Now, why? Because you can't revoke or track a plastic card moving through space. If I'm a policeman, I can flash my badge outside of my precinct off of hours and use it to gain entry to your house. I can flash my badge to walk into the Verizon Center. My boss doesn't know that I'm abusing my power as a cop. That, you know, I could be in California and flash a DC badge and probably get away with it. I could certainly flash one outside of my time zone. So existing credentials, existing badges, you can't track them, you can't revoke them, you can't monitor them, you can't condition them. As soon as those things become a piece of software, you can do all of that. And in this particular case, you know, with software, I could take a piece of paper, I could write $5,000, I could take a photo of it, I could take a photo of you. I can hit sign, I can create a signature, 3822. I can say, go to the bank and just tell them, Sailor gave you a check, 3822.
Could we test this hypothesis?
You should ask me to put more money on the check before you do that. When you walk into the bank, you say 3822. The bank just types 3822 on a phone. They see your photo, my photo, the check. What I just gave you was a certified check. It's better than a real certified check and a passport, right? It's more secure than that. In fact, you're better off to have something digitally signed on a mobile device than to walk into a bank with 2 forms of ID and a check. And so I think when you start to apply this to everything, right? Social Security, I can take your health care card from United Healthcare. I can go into a hospital. I get $100,000 worth of health care, right? They're not going to check. And so there's endemic fraud in the healthcare system, in the credit card system, in the tax system of every country on earth. And if you were to add that up, that's probably got to go to $1 trillion a year. So people, they sit around and they're like, how are you going to afford this stuff? The phone's only $500 at retail, right? You can give away $2 billion per year, right, on the savings from the fraud. And you think people don't care? The Italians care, right? The joke in Italy is nobody pays taxes south of Rome, right? I mean, you know, if you look, the Greeks care, at least the Greek government cares, right? They had a tax on swimming pools, and I remember in the last crisis, they flew an airplane over everybody's house in Athens, and they determined that 3% of the population was complying with the tax. And so, for the most part, when you look at Homeland Security, when you look at tax, when you look at health care, when you look at government services, when you look at bank fraud, when you look at any kind of trade and logistics, they all have endemic inefficiencies in them. All of those things are ready to be obliterated by mobile software in the coming 10 years.
And if you want more details, you can walk across the hallway to the Brookings bookstore and purchase your copy. Michael, thank you very much.